Uh-oh, what do you hear? What do you say? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sports Bar on US Army WTF Moments and WTF Nation Radio. Oh my God, it's me, the coach. I'm running solo tonight. I can't believe this. King has finally let me get the show by myself tonight. I kid. King's not feeling that well, and I'm running it today. We are shooting straight from the hip, and as you guys can see, coming in a little bit of a different type of view. We're doing a little bit of experimentation tonight. Oh, yeah, we're coming in just a little bit different, trying it out to see how this is going to work out here on our sports bar. So, first off, I want to welcome everybody here to the sports bar. Again, I am Coach, host for y'all this evening. We will be talking tonight about several topics. We're going to be talking about the NCAA Football Championship, the NFL postseason, the coaching carousel that is happening around there. Got a little bit of NASCAR news to get all of you rednecks all revved up about the upcoming season. We're even going to go ahead and just for my co-host who is not here tonight, I'm even going to speak about the WNBA moratorium. If anybody else did not know about the WNBA moratorium, well, guess what? Thanks to King Smith, you're going to get your daily dose of the WNBA news, and it's all thanks to you, King. Yes, everybody can thank King Smith for keeping the WNBA relevant. No, I just kid, my friend. But yes, hopefully you guys are doing well, and if this is your first time here, well, put your name over there into the chats and say hi. Tell us where you're coming from and out there. And so far, I've got a couple people inside the chats as we're looking. I've got the chat rolling up underneath here. I got an snap on there from my boy King. Yes, hey, how you doing, buddy? I also got Mr. Ruby Martinez on Facebook saying hi. Hey, Ruby, how are you? And I got Ted Gaming 23 saying hi over there on YouTube. Well, hey, y'all, go ahead and say hi to the chats and wherever you're coming from. Give us a like, give us a share, send this out to your friends, say hi to everybody. Let's talk about sports because one-way conversation of sports is pretty daggone boring. And even though I'm here tonight, now I know the pain that King was going through while I was out sick or I wasn't able to do the daggone show. So I do want to see everybody's everybody's comments inside the chat. Want to see make sure you guys are up there. And like I said, let's get this ball rolling up here because the first thing I'm going to bring up, and yes, we are actually going to go straight into it regarding the college football championships. Now, as we are coming back from this weekend, we did see that the University of Indiana took care of business and blew out. And I mean blew out. Oh God. Give me a second. Hold on. I want to make sure I got that exact score correct. Yes, I did. Blew out the Ducks of Oregon 56-22. And I do want to mention something. Somebody owes somebody 10 push-ups because Indiana whooped up on Oregon 56-22. Not going to mention who that person is, but I think he knows who that person is. It's the same guy who put Roll Tide over into the comments. But they will be taking on the U. Yes, the University of Miami, is back in the national championship game. First time in 23 years with the, Dorsey days. It was Ken Dorsey back in those days. Oh, my goodness. The second coming of the U, now they're back up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you had seen any of these teams at the beginning of the year and had put any bit of money that the University of Indiana would not only be in the national championship, but they would also have the number one quarterback in the nation who won the Heisman Trophy. And finally, the U is finally coming back now that they're legally able to pay all of their athletes. Holy crap, they're back in the national championship race. All right. I, for one, did not see this whatsoever at the beginning of the season. I did not see this whatsoever at the beginning of these college football playoffs. I'm not going to lie to you out there. I'm not going to lie to you whatsoever. I thought experience was going to easily keep going, get whoever the national champion was going to be based off of who had the experience. I did not foresee that Mendoza was going to take over college football in a way that I have not seen a player take over college football like Cam Newton. That's how good this was. This is Cam Newton level before in Auburn in his last year. That is how well Mendoza is performing. He's going to be the number one pick in the draft. He's going to go to the Los Angeles Raiders, and I believe it's, I'm just looking at trends with the way things roll, with the way things are. Miami is going to be very tough opponent to beat. And I don't think Indiana has actually faced somebody who is as athletic. And now this is nothing against the Ducks, but the Ducks were definitely not as athletic as the University of Miami. And I don't think Indiana has played against them. It's going to be a tough game, but you have not seen one thing this season to tell me that Indiana, Mendoza, is not going to be victorious come Monday of next week. All right. And then I got King in there. Yeah, I'll get him done in the post. Yeah, you got that on there for that. But while we're looking at the playoffs, I do want to say that the playoffs still need to be tweaked. Yes, we do have the number one team in the nation right now who are playing for the national championship. All right. And Indiana has definitely deserved that number one seed. The problem that I have, again, centers on Miami. It would have ended up being, I'm going to say this right now. They were put in an impossible position by selecting the University of Miami. You got rid of Notre Dame, and I have said this, that Notre Dame is the single most important football team in college football. And as Notre Dame goes, college football will definitely go because they are the outlier. They are the malcontent. The prime is the best way to call them. Miami getting in without even going to the ACC championship game. Because remember, the ACC champion is actually Duke. Okay? It is Duke. It baffles the heck out of me that, that Duke of all teams are the ones that are be there. But regardless of that, where I'm coming from is that Indiana is going to be unbelievably difficult. Miami, they have had their great run. They're playing great as a team. I love their defense, and I love the way that their offense is clicking right now. But Indiana, to me, is definitely going to be pulling out on Monday. And we're going to see, surprisingly, one of the most least likely national champions in college football. Okay? Up into this season, if you would have said that Indiana, you would have never have thought about them in football whatsoever. Okay? Not one single bit. There's a lot of schools. This would have been like saying that UConn was going to win the national championship. Or, one of the, I'm not going to say North Carolina because, North Carolina does have a competitive team. They just are never in the national championship hunt. And they probably won't be with with Belichick down there. But this is not one of those basketball schools that have a decent football program. This is a basketball school that had a football program that nobody even, recognized. I thought that they were as bad as Vanderbilt at one point. But hey, Vanderbilt has come along ever since the NIL has come through there. And yes, my cousin did go to Vanderbilt, or my cousin's son went to Vanderbilt. I don't know how the heck we call him that one, cousin 3 times removed or whatever. He did go to Vandy for his 6th year, and he was there when they upset Alabama. So roll Tide there. Mm-hmm. And King, I'm glad that you brought up right there. I'm going to go back over to the chat again. I'm glad you see that. And then you put in Raiders drafting a QB. Well, that's actually what I'm going to be talking about here pretty soon, because now we're actually going to go into our NFL news. And I'm going to talk real quick regarding our NFL news, the playoffs and the coaching carousel that's happening right now. And for everybody who has seen over this past week and also checking us out from this week to last week, all 300 of y'all that saw us there live concurrently last week, I wanted to bring up that our picks were, King and I disagreed on about 2 games, and King got one and I got the other. And I was not really too surprised with how these things rolled out. Both of us did pick that LA was going to go ahead and get over Carolina. And I did mention that Carolina, even though they were a 10-point underdog, needed to be into that part of the game where they felt like they were getting disrespected. And all the way up until the last two drives of the game, the last two drives of the game for Carolina, Bryce Young to me, for the first time that I saw him live, and I have seen him live because they are in my broadcast area, so I've seen him, over the past 4 years play for the Panthers, play with no offensive line, play with very little help, and play with very bad coaching. And for the first time in 4 years, I saw him making NFL level passes. Granted, he still looks like he's an elite college quarterback, not an elite NFL quarterback. But he was making passes that were necessary to put Carolina in a position to win. Their defense let them down, and the Raiders' offense with Stafford and Nakua, they are phenomenal, and they just pounced on that defense at the end. But my hats off goes to Bryce Young, and I will give a forewarning on something real quick. Hold on. Oh, sorry, I'm turned off. I got to mute for a second. I got a cough. Sorry about that. Excuse me. So, my hats off go to the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young. And I believe that next year they're in a very weak division, despite all three teams, Tampa, Atlanta, and them finishing 8-9. I believe next year in that NFC South, Carolina is going to be a winning team as well as back-to-back conference champions. Okay. Then we come up to the Sunday night game. And that's when I started getting into that thing about the home team was going to end up winning the home field advantage. Man, oh man, did the Packers and the Bears give us one of the games that definitely the game of the weekend. And for my money, I would say one of those games that make you love football because it was cold, it was snowing before the game, and just like all season, Chicago looked erratic in the first half, made some adjustments into the second. Caleb Williams comes alive and makes those plays, and erasing a 15-point deficit in the fourth quarter has now has got Chicago to beat Green Bay in Chicago, which by the way hadn't happened in a long time, without Aaron Rodgers, and we'll get to Aaron Rodgers later. But that's been a nice turnaround, and that's been Caleb Williams. Now I know that Caleb Williams has had some pretty well. I'm going to give it below league average statistics. And for the number one pick in the draft, you would anticipate some higher, better statistics, coming out of somebody who we believed was that polished. But I see something, and it's the same thing that I saw with a couple other second-year quarterbacks who have brought their teams to winning records and into good playoff runs. And when I mention these two names, you're going to understand where I'm coming from. And the first one is Ben Roethlisberger. Second one, yes, is going to be Tom Brady. Now, I need to explain to everybody that the Tom Brady that I'm thinking of in year 2 of the NFL is not the Tom Brady that was there at year 22 of the NFL when he's, Tom Terrific and 7-time Super Bowl champion. I'm talking about the Tom Brady that was the game manager. Okay? And I think you guys know what I'm talking about with the game manager if you've been watching for the past 20 or some odd years of football. And Corey, hey, how you doing out there on YouTube? Saw you out there. Nice to see you. So where I'm coming from is this. He is a game manager. Caleb Williams has been a game manager. Tom Brady, year 2, was a game manager. Ben Roethlisberger, his rookie season and his second season, brought his team to the playoffs. In fact, if you remember on his rookie season, I believe he went like 11-1 going into the playoffs, and then went right to the AFC Championship game where they lost to Tom Brady. And his second year, they went 9-7, and then he game managed everybody all the way up to the Super Bowl victory. Okay, Hines Ward and the bus, the offense was going well with that. And let's just say this: Ben Roethlisberger was making the plays, making the throws in the same manner that Tom Brady was making the plays and making the throws to get his team to win. And Caleb Williams, this season, in his second season, has been managing the Chicago Bears well enough to put them in a position to get those wins. I will say that I believe, and I will get to the games over here at the end of the for next week. We're going to get to the previews here, but it's going to be a very, very difficult for anybody to not pick the Chicago Bears, and we'll get to them when they talk about the Rams, which we just talked about with them, but we'll get up to their preview. Now, going into the Sunday games, Jacksonville, they did not deliver at home. That's where we saw that we ended up having with the Jacksonville game. Buffalo pulled it out, and Josh Allen, you have no other excuse. So let's see if you continue this going into next week and going up against the Broncos. Had Bo Nix off of his bye week, and Sean Payton's still coaching up there, but that's going to be an interesting thing to do. As far as Jacksonville, Jacksonville is also going to be looking at it, and it's coming back that Travis Hunter is coming with recovery, and he still is looking to play both ways. I believe another year building off of the offense and getting a better bit on the defense. Some key free agents, and Jacksonville, can be back up. That is a very weak division, and outside of Indianapolis, I really don't see anybody else that's going to do, excel out there. Nashville's still further away than they're going to be there. And so anyway, but as I'm also talking about that, the next game that we saw after that was the Eagles against the 49ers. I had the Eagles going at home, and I disagreed saying that the Eagles were. Well, I thought the Eagles were going to take the home, and that was my second game that I was wrong with. Great job by San Francisco. Christian McCaffrey, he's the real deal, and just getting the ball to him is going to get him the scores. But it's glad to see that heads are finally rolling. And I wish I had the clip up here of the kid that got the Christmas present for going to an Eagles game. And he basically said that Nick Petrolio needed to be flipping burgers, because the first half, he's cooking it right to perfection. And then in the second half, the offense is just raw. And A.J. Brown also needs to be, packing his bags and getting out of there. And seeing the fact that I stuck with A.J. Brown throughout my entire fantasy football season, kid, I agree with you. Something's going to need to get done over there in Philadelphia. That offense was inept multiple times during the season. And if anybody watched them throughout the season, there would be moments where they would not be able to move the ball for 5 drives in a row and then would be able to pull off like an 80-yard drive in a matter of 4 plays. Something needs to be done up there. Sirianni, they fired that. You're going to need to get a good offensive coordinator. You can't just promote somebody in there. You need to get somebody who understands the uniqueness of Jalen Hurts. And then I also agree with this. A.J. Brown is about to Terrell Owens himself or Keyshawn Johnson himself out of his Super Bowl championship winning. That's when the wide receiver becomes the absolute diva, thinks he's the best, and burns all the bridges out. And A.J. Brown has done that in Philadelphia. Do not bring him to the New York Jets. Woody Johnson, do not trade for him. Please do not fucking trade for A.J. Brown. That's the last thing he needs to do. You know what? Send A.J. Brown to Cleveland just so that him and Shedeur Sanders can go ahead and have that. So that's what we need to do. That's what Philly needs to do. But San Francisco, great job with that. I don't know how you're going to be faring next round, though, because as you were going to be going against the Seattle Seahawks, we'll talk about that at the end, you are also going to be going against Sam Darnold. And then to end the two games, you did have the Patriots, who we both agreed that were going to win. Drake May, not the greatest game out of it, but once again, game manager. And, the Patriots just snapped the crap out of Chargers, man. Justin Herbert, buddy, it's bad enough when you can't make it to an AFC championship game. It's even worse, and it's turning into Dak Prescott levels when you can't even win a playoff game. Man, something needs to happen with Herbert here next season, or if not, I think that will be his last in San Diego, just so that they can get something new and start it, because you have hit your ceiling right there. Something needs to be done out there. And then the only blowout game that we truly had was the Texans beating up on the Steelers. I believe King had the Steelers, and I said I was going to take the Texans because, as it has come out, that after that game, Mike Tomlin is now no longer the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, we're getting into the coaching carousel right now after that game, and I kind of agreed with that part, that Tomlin was going to be no longer the head coach there. This is the part of the NFL season that is always the most mysterious to me. With the way the NFL head coaching carousel has been opened, not only with an opening in Pittsburgh now, but with the same opening with a MVP level quarterback in in Baltimore, a dynamic young team in the New York Giants, an up-and-coming type of team with a quarterback who needs a good mentor in both Miami and in Cleveland, as well as, we don't know what else is going to happen, and I don't know if the LA is going to end up coming out without it. And then you also have the lure of the number one pick, with Mendoza coming out, and with the LA Raiders going to have that number one, LA Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders still having that number one pick. We are definitely looking at a time that the coaching carousel is going to be very volatile. I believe that John Harbaugh, don't know if Jim will end up being, out in San Diego, but don't consider me any type of surprise. I think John has the eyes and the laser targets of one organization, and there's no wiggle room outside of it. I believe that the New York Giants, and if I were the Giants, I would just have laser focus on just John Harbaugh. That, I believe, is going to be a match made in heaven, with a young quarterback, high picks, young offense, a lot of talent on that defense, and some good cap room, with a team that just needs to have a good head coach. But now with Tomlin out, Tomlin gets some looks. Reports are, though, that Tomlin is going to take the year of 2026 off, and because he has resigned, there is going to be some type of compensation for anybody to get Mike Tomlin out there. And and as soon as Tomlin, the situation kind of reminds you of what happened with Sean Payton, where Payton left and then took a year off, then ended up having to go to Denver. And I think there was something like a third or a fourth round pick or something like that for Denver to send. Most famously, the Jets had to send a draft pick over to the New England Patriots when they hired Bill Parcells in 1996 or 97. It was in 97 that happened. And Robert, Robert Peterson. Robert Edwards. He wore number 47, and he ended up at the Pro Bowl practice game, ripping up 3 of his 4 ligaments in his leg. So don't ask me how I still know that one, but yeah, that's what happened to that pick. In order to get Mike Tomlin, you're going to have some type of compensation. So I would expect a first-round draft pick for Mike Tomlin in 2027, but he will be taken off this year, is what reports are out. I would love to see him on ESPN. I'd love to see him on the NFL Network. Heck, I'd love to see him in a commercial right next to Mike Epps. All right? That's what I need. That's what I would love to see. And if we can ever see him in a commercial over this next year next to Mike Epps, well, we'll finally get that. We'll finally get that taken care of. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, real quick, going back over here to the comments. Once again, Corey, it's nice to hear about sports. Been writing code and going to school. Oh man, I got you on there. And also said, what's up to King? King's, yeah, unfortunately, King is not here today. Still in the chats. If you're still in there, King, go ahead and say hi to everybody again. But we're going to get back a little bit more. Just kind of hits a couple more sports stories before we get out. I got about 3 or 4 more real quick. First one I want to bring up, though, is for everybody in NASCAR. Yes, NASCAR, buckety, let's go racing, boys, to kiss my sister, and I'm going to get some Bud Lights in me. Oh, yeah. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have been living under, well, seeing that you have not been living in a civilization where NASCAR news is pertinent to you, NASCAR just recently changed its, we call it playoff formatting, but it's championship format for the upcoming 2026 season and beyond after controversy over the last 10 years of the playoffs that they've got, which, you don't have playoffs in a motorsport or trying to be a stick and ball sport when you're not a stick and ball sport. But there was a compromise after a ridiculous amount of controversy during the last season regarding the playoffs as well as the scoring. And the compromise that they've come back is a revert back to, well, what they had from 2004 to 2014, which is the 10-race playoff chase in 2013. The last 10 races of the year, the final 16 drivers will compete against each other in those 10 races against on points. Whoever has the highest points at the end of those 10 races amongst the 16 drivers will be declared the winner. And there is no more win and you're in gimmick. So they base everybody off of their points when they have when they're in the when they're in the they're in their first 26 races. So whomever the first through 16th in points are, that's who will be competing for the championship. Now, once that last 10 races go in, everybody gets 2,000 points, but there is a 100-point difference between the person who is first at the end of 26 races versus the person who is 16th. So that person who is first will get 2,100 points. The person who is last will get 2,000 points. Points are also going to matter where wins are now going to be a total of 55 points instead of 40 points. So there will be 15 additional points that will be scored for anybody who gets a win. Unfortunately, they did not get rid of the stage races and the stages and the stage cautions. So, but the playoff points that came with stage wins are no longer going to be up there. NASCAR, yes, I know I have completely lost the entire audience talking about NASCAR, and the explanation of how their championship is will also still take people away from the sport. It's a step in the right direction, but NASCAR needs to be taking gigantic leaps and bounds into the right direction for them to gain relevance again. I'm glad that they're going to something that was at least a format with better integrity than the current playoff format. and to actually show whom a true winner was during that time. Now, a lot of people said that because Jimmy Johnson won 5 in a row and I believe 7 championships in that format, no, 6 out of his 7 championships in that format, I would argue that during that time, Jimmy Johnson was the best racer during that time. And he was going up against great competition. I watched him. It wasn't just that he got great during those last 10 races. It was he was consistently good through those first 26 and then got better at those last 10 races. He increased his performance as the playoffs came along or as the chase came along, much like many of the greats should have done now. So that's where we come from with that on NASCAR. But enough of the NASCAR. Let's also go ahead and talk about something real quick that I brought up and maybe something that none of y'all are aware of, but I want to bring this up and kind of bring this as my last thing before I go into my bit about the WNBA. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, if you're not aware of this right now, the what's called FanDuel Sports Network. It's owned by another company. This company used to be the Bally Sports Company. Back in the day, it used to be Fox Sports before the split off of Fox to Disney and whatever they have right now. It used to be back in the day Sports Channel USA and a couple of the other regional sports networks. Well, that is one of the legacy programs and one of the outlets that has been broadcasting local games for the NHL, Major League Baseball, and the NBA for decades. They have, and anyway, FanDuel Sports Network has now missed payments to 9 NBA teams, 7 NHL teams, and will soon be missing payments to 13 Major League Baseball teams as their revenue is drying up and they are filing again for bankruptcy. They were bailed out about a year ago when they were Bally Sports Network, and it basically was a band-aid on a open sucking chest wound. The regional sports networks are dying is now going to completely hinder the way some of these teams operate, as the income that these regional sports networks bring to those teams, somewhere from around the low areas to $22 million for some of the lower teams, to almost $150 million for the larger teams, are now going to be gone from revenue due to these regional sports networks coming away. Now, what does that mean for us as NBA fans or as NHL fans or me even as Major League Baseball fans? Well, this is where the true haves and have-nots of sports has been coming along. In the NFL, because they have a national contract, they are able to broadcast all of the games on all of the major networks, regardless of where they are broadcast. They are broadcasted in the local networks according to whichever, Fox or CBS affiliate that is there. They have a national broadcast. It is worthwhile for them to do it because there is not as much. You are committing on a 41 game basis in hockey as well as in the NBA for just home games. To do that on a national level for almost everybody is impossible. But where it came through was the local sports networks. Now, it's all started with a lot of them with the MSG network as well as sports, the one over in LA. But these regional sports networks that are their own entities, like Yes Network, Nesson, Masson, Fox Sports LA, WGN, or whichever the one is being done over in Chicago. So these larger markets are keeping their legacy programs and they're making hand over fist into it because that is the only way for them to broadcast. But they're also owned by those teams like the Dodgers. And I know that there's a joint venture with the Cubs as well as the White Sox. The Mets and the Yankees have their own networks that they broadcast their games out of. And the distribution deals are basically circular money through them. But what's going to end up happening is that we are going to be coming to a part where the local fans will not be able to watch their own teams. And I don't know how fun that is to be a sports fan where you're not able to watch your own local sports teams. I get it that if I'm out of the the viewing area, then I'm not going to be able to see it. It's real hard for me to watch a Yankee game in North Carolina. But this is also going to force all three of those sports to get rid of a little bit more of their archaic rules that they have. For instance, and King and I have spoken about this, Major League Baseball has had some ridiculous broadcast rules that have tied up, especially in my region, as well as Virginia and in Maryland, going all the way up to Delaware, regarding the way that the Nationals and the Baltimore Orioles are broadcast. It's funny that the Baltimore Orioles are broadcasted and considered a local team in Fayetteville, North Carolina, 3 states away. We can't even get the Atlanta Braves games. We have to get those games from Baltimore. And we have to have their channel, which none of our cable companies have. So unless we are authorized a secondary regional sports channel, which some areas like in Charlotte are authorized, you don't get any type of baseball games. You can only, because we are considered a Baltimore suburb for the viewing area. We also don't get the Nationals games because they split those areas. Anytime one of my teams were, and this is where like I have the issue with regarding Major League Baseball and how they broadcast their games. If I am paying for Major League Baseball.tv for one specific team, I should be able to watch that one specific team. Well, because I am in a area where both the Yankees will be broadcast in the Nationals area as well as the Baltimore area, any game that is played against those two teams by the Yankees, which they play 13 times, so 26 games, I am blacked out from watching. I can't watch those games in North Carolina because I fall underneath the local broadcast rights to two stations that my cable providers will not provide. I can't even watch them if they were going to go to Atlanta either because there is an overlap and some of the Atlanta area will not allow me to work in there. I got to go VPN at that point to get that if they ever do play against Atlanta. And with the way Major League Baseball is, every team is playing against each other. So that means every single one of their fans are getting blocked out of watching some of their games just because of these archaic regional sports network clauses and contracts that is killing people right now. So, that being said, I would be advising you right now to definitely look at how you are going to be consuming your media. Sailing the high seas, if you know what I mean there, is becoming a much more, well, acceptable method for a lot of people streaming their live sports because they are not able to get that. Personally, for me, I still am a cable subscriber, so I can go ahead and watch those games. But I also do have people who, well, live up there in those regions, and I can watch any of those games that I wanted to off of them. Also, I really didn't want to watch the Yankees because, well, they still have Aaron Boone as their manager. And the only thing that can upset me more than Aaron Boone still being the manager of the New York Yankees is talking about the WNBA. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there's been a moratorium in place for the past 48 hours on the labor talks with the WNBA. The moratorium basically means that they will meet at a future time, but neither one of them are striking, nor are they locked out. They are just, in relationship terms, taking a break from each other, which is such a womanly thing to do. No, this isn't being sexist, but it's just funny that they need time away to think it over. Okay. Nobody wants to call it a strike because the players already know that they're going to be called selfish. Nobody wants to call it a lockout because if they do call it a lockout, then the owners who are in a business model which loses them money have their backs up against the wall as the court of public perception will try to be swayed towards the players during a lockout. Now, on labor disputes, regardless of how I always go for the players more than I do for the owners. The NBA has a phenomenal revenue sharing where it's nearly a 50-50 share. And, you can see by the ridiculous amount of contracts that are being signed right there where mid-level players who give you 16 and 9 a night are making $34 million. Well, yeah, that's the way that it goes, but you are sharing it pretty equally. Major League Baseball, well, we'll talk about that during their nuclear winter. But the NHL has also came back from their nuclear season of 2004 to 2005 and have had stability for the past 20 years. Nothing regarding lockout, and the sport is much healthier now than it was 20 years ago. NFL, well, the NFL just is a cash cow, and basically dead cap money is what you have to worry about with the NFL. But man, oh man, the WNBA needs to realize something. When you're still being subsidized by the NBA and you cannot make a profit, you really have no legs to stand on. I'm going to say this in a bad way, and this is something that upsets me because it's now going into politics. But the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has closed its doors after 50 some odd years of basically financing shows that you see on the PBS channel, okay? It's its own corporation. It was a business. It was a business so that they could help and pay for all the fees for the public broadcasting. And it was the way to clear money through the government into those PBS stations. Well, now that funding is gone, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is gone. And let me say this, once you realize that, yes, that is a sad thing, that something from our childhood that we knew of is now not going to be there, you do have to realize that when you are supported by somebody else, all it takes is somebody else to wake up and change their mind and say, no, you've got to support yourself. And even institutions that have been around for 50 years and have done great and phenomenal things for the education of youth and the entertainment of adults for decades for all Americans, for them to run out because of their lack of foresight regarding their funding sources, well, it's a little shame. It would be a damn shame if the WNBA did not remember that their funding source is one thing away from the NBA just saying, we've had enough of doing it. We have supported you this long. it may take somebody just to get that upset to finally have them happen there. So, my advice, there was a phenomenal proposal that was put out by the owners of the WNBA teams that quadrupled the highest salary and quintupled, 5 times, quintupled the base salary of the WNBA player. Okay? And it was rejected because they want equal pay to what the men have. Pick your fights, ladies. Do not pick this one. That's all I've really got to say about that one, and I'm kind of done with that. But and let me just show this up because I'm a little ticked off at what he had to say inside the chat. Corey did agree with that one. We'll go back to that. I wonder if we can build some code to help the Saints and the Raiders win. No, I don't think we can build any code on there, Corey. Even though King thinks that you can't do it. But WNBA news, yes, that was all for you, King. That's the only reason why we had the WNBA news out. So I hope you're glad about that. I'm not going to give any type of rant whatsoever. This is my first solo show. Had some some people out there. I wish there had some more people. I want to thank all of the 100 and so odd people that had tuned in tonight. Thank you very much. Had a lot of them over there on YouTube as well as on X, and real happy that you guys were out there with us. Love you all for being out there with us. Same exact thing. I'd also want to thank everybody on YouTube as well as on Facebook for being here on this solo show tonight. We tried it on a different, a different look. We were trying out different ways to broadcast to everybody. And we're trying to figure out, what we're doing with this. As you can see, if I had, had a different thing on the bottom over here. It says WTF Nation. We might have gotten a little bit better, but we're trying it on a new, landscape. Or actually, excuse me, I take that back. We're in portrait mode right now, and just wanted to see how that would end up going tonight. So, and look, if this thing wasn't good tonight, well, hey, look, this is my name is King Smith, and I appreciate you guys going well. I kid. But for all y'all that did watch us tonight, I do thank you. And like I said, even if it was bad, my name is the coach. I appreciate you all being on here tonight. And, King usually wraps us up. But today, I've got a little bit of a video I'd like to wrap everybody up with. Added this in. Unfortunately, it's coming in on that, so it's coming in on portrait mode, so it's going to be a little cut off. But this is just my New Jersey way to say goodbye to you for this evening. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope to see you next week. For King, I'm Coach. This is the Sports Bar. We're out.
Not yet. What's the situation on the ground today, right now, in the mall?
Confusion, instability, vacuum at the top.